Okay, in today's video, I'll be talking briefly about WWE versus UFC, so let's get right into it here. So pretty much WWE stands for Road Wrestling Entertainment. Let me get out the point right away. Or can you see I don't know if you can see the mouse cursor, but let's just get the point here. So I'll say WWE stands for Road Wrestling Entertainment, and WWE uses a lot of factors to sort of portray the wrestling it shows on screen. It uses a bit of storytelling, it uses a bit of theatrics as visuals, and it obviously leads up to the choreographed part where wrestlers and such they sort of do the moves that they do ahead of time or before, so that everything will work out smoothly when they are being shown doing these things live on camera. Because obviously once the video goes live, it's pretty much in different parts of the country, and as such they want to make sure that the product that they're advertising is as professional and as slick and as smooth as possible. So obviously a big emphasis is on the entertainment aspect here, and to break it down very very quickly here, storytelling is the main point. This is sort of where the ideas come from. Theatrics is sort of essentially to, I guess, sort of portray emotions, to sort of pull strings of the audience to see what they sort of gravitate towards to, and to maybe show that some characters are more relatable than others. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to get at here. And then we obviously lead off to the blow off here. This is where the storytelling and the visuals / cinematics, this is where they sort of cultivate to or accumulate to is the end result happening. So another thing with WWE is the rings, and how the rings are essentially sort of modeled after, I guess, the WWE rings. I guess if you look at rings nowadays from New Japan or Ring of Honor or Pro Wrestling Guerrilla or something like that, the rings are sort of typical. You have a typical four ring posts, 3 corners for each 4 corners, so 12 ropes in total. You have the center mat, and obviously underneath the mat is wood and a bunch of microphones, so that when the wrestlers, when they slam or when bodies are being clashed onto the ground, you hear a big kind of reaction. And this is because obviously flesh is hitting wood, so that hurts like shit already. But also you have the microphones to help sort of amplify the impact, to make it more grand than it actually looks. I guess to make it more painful in the simple sense. Another thing with wrestling, with the physical confrontation, so when they actually start fighting each other or whatnot, is if you look at John Cena and how he's holding Randy Orton here, he's sort of holding on to their neck and the legs. And this is so when Randy Orton slams, like he is seen here, his neck and his leg won't be able to take the impact, and that's a good thing because the neck is very sensitive and so is the leg, but the back and the ass and the legs, I guess, are not so sensitive. I'm not really sure, to be honest. And obviously Orton is doing a fine job here selling the move, making it look impactful, and that's another thing with WWE is that they focus a lot on protecting each other and selling moves for each other and to each other, so that WWE in general can seem more of a spectacle. The fact that we also have wrestling, but we can also make wrestling look as, I guess, modern and more relatable and more, I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but just more interesting, I suppose. I don't know. I didn't really write a script for this, to be honest. Or if I did, it wasn't what I kind of like to do my video off. Anyways, let's get onto this thing here. So obviously with WWE, another thing that people get wrong with WWE is the fact that it's sort of gay, because obviously you're seeing men wrestle and semi-nude. The fact that they're wrestling with literally no clothes on the top but some clothes on the bottom. The fact that it's fake too, because as you can tell, Cena's holding onto Orton's neck in a particular position, obviously to protect the impact, so that when Orton punches the Orton, Orton won't snap back and obviously fuck up his neck or vertebrae. But yeah, it's also fake too, because these moves are sort of done before they go live and before the cameras start sort of filming. So again, fake and gay is sort of the typical slangs and terms that you hear when people talk about wrestling that are generally very uneducated, the ignorant people, so to speak. Or I guess what the common person thinks if they don't watch pro wrestling or wrestling in general. So if you look at the pay-per-views here, you can see that they're very, very sort of, I guess, a bit cartoony, the fact that they're catered towards kids. So as you can tell by these photos here, let me take this thing off, or I guess I'll just leave it on. As you can tell by these pay-per-views here, there's a bunch of color everywhere. Obviously in the WrestleMania poster down here, and you can't really see it because of the slide, but just take my word for it, I guess. And here you can sort of see a bit more dark, but there's a lot of coloring too from the John Cena, Randy Orton. Even in the Night of Champions tier too, you have the little Roman Colosseum sort of shtick kind of arena, special editing, photography kind of crap going on down there. And even on here too, you see the belt kind of being portrayed in a grander scale here, and you can just tell by the little turbo clocks. So essentially, WWE is trying to make it sort of flashy too, I guess. You know, they're trying to make it so that kids can tune into their shit and actually watch it, you know, because kids are a big selling point of WWE, and that's how it's always been ever since it turned PG back in 05 or 06, I'm not really too sure. Although WWE may be faking game, there is actually some matches where they actually use real shit to beat the fuck out of each other. They use, for instance, pole clubs, sledgehammers, baseball bats, chairs, ladders, and tables, and these all hurt like shit. Sometimes, however, in wrestling, things don't go according to how they seem, and as such, you get instances where, for instance, Enzo Amore, I guess someone was throwing him onto the rope so that he could fall down, but he accidentally hit his head and got a concussion. How Finn Balor, how his arm has been injured, obviously there's a cast on there. How Shinsuke apparently dropped Cena in a weird position, and how Cena's neck is sort of a bit contorted, like he's about to snap his neck or something. And how in this case John Cena suffered a broken nose because Seth Rollins apparently hit him way too hard with his fucking knee, and as such busted up his nose. It looks really ugly, by the way. Obviously I could show more graphic images, but this is sort of the basics, I guess. Obviously there's more like blood and stitches and body parts coming off, but I don't want to get too graphic. However, despite all this, WWE is sort of a pros and cons kind of thing. You know, for instance, I guess one of the pros of working with WWE or any sort of wrestling industry is the fact that you can go anywhere around the world. But obviously, of course, to sacrifice family, because you're gone for around 300 or so out of the year. So you're gone for pretty much 3/4 to 3.5 out of 4. You're gone for a very, very long time, let's be honest here. And the fact that your schedule is very hectic, you know, the fact that you have to do training and update and planning and all those kind of other stuff as well too. So with that being said, that's sort of the brief summary of WWE, and now let's move on to the UFC here. And of course, people that watch WWE or UFC will sort of get this sort of transition. For those of you that don't worry about it. So UFC now. So UFC is essentially seen as the more masculine version of wrestling, I suppose, where you take off the fake shit and you move on to straight women and men wanting to kill each other, essentially, to that kind of point. And I guess people that watch UFC, in my honest opinion, I think the sort of maybe like jocks, you know, the sort of masculine, like the men's men, you know, that kind of stuff. And you can tell by the stereotypes here. You can obviously pause the video. This is sort of how I see men in UFC, you know, the fans, maybe those that are really, really into the UFC, and maybe this is how it is. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Now, also with UFC, the difference is that the ring is sort of an octagon. So instead of having 4 corners, you actually have an octagon, as seen by this bird's eye view camera here. And as such, there's a bunch of sponsors there too. There's Monster Drink, there's the UFC, the store, the pay-per-views, the 25th anniversary, and you can tell that it's, I guess, a bit more professional in the sense that you actually have, you know, different products. You're not having like Snickers or Totinos or that kind of stuff. You actually have companies that kind of sell stuff to maybe more of the teenage/adult demographics. And of course, when I look at the UFC, I obviously think of Rome and its Colosseum and how, you know, people would kill each other, they would fight animals will fight each other. And essentially, it's pretty much Mother Nature versus Mother Nature, how it's very, very grotesque. And now how, I guess, MMA is sort of seen as the modern day version. Obviously, the fact that it's sanctioned and the fact that there isn't weapons being brought onto the octagon to kill each other, but rather fists, kicks, and various forms of wrestling moves. Various forms of mixed martial arts formats like judo or wrestling or kickboxing or boxing or any of those sort of forms listed. Now, if you look at the pay-per-views here for the UFC, you can see that it's less kid-friendly, and it's more also catered to adults, as you can tell. The fonts are more bigger, they're not as flashy as WWE. The coloring is actually a lot more dark and more grittier, I suppose, as opposed to WWE's very sort of bright kind of Disneyland kind of feel to it. And yeah, that's pretty much it too. Even when you look at the pay-per-views with a lot of coloring, or maybe some color, as you can tell by 217, the background is still very dark. The fonts are still very bright. But that's all, the fact that it's not very colorful, the fact that there isn't sort of very, very bright colors like yellow or green, the fact that there are sort of symbol colors like red and blue or black or white, the idea is that they're trying to sell sport that is based heavily on just sheer violence. The fact that two fighters are showing the world who's the better fighter out of them two. The fact that it's essentially a real fight and that it's not choreographed and fake like WWE is, according to a lot of people that don't watch the sport, I guess. Even in the pay-per-views that have a lot of coloring, I guess, like in 130, the fact that all the fighters are colored, the fact that the background, again, the same thing, it's still black and there's a bit of gray smoke down there too. If you look at 194, you can tell the fighters obviously are colored, but the background is still gray and there's a bit of black area down to the side down here. And yeah. Now, when you actually watch UFC here, you obviously see the typical stuff. You'll see, like in a real fight, blood, body parts being swollen, and that's because, it's the real shit. It's not something that it doesn't pretend to be. It is the real deal. So as you can tell, McDonald is bleeding from his nose, a bit crooked because maybe Lawler punched him too hard that his nose kind of got a bit contorted. There's obviously blood is raining down on his nose to the side lip and to the lip and to the even his teeth is bleeding too. Look at that chin. And this is sort of the UFC in a sport. It's just a lot of sheer violence. And as Nate Diaz once said, kill or be killed. That's just how it is. Ultimately, in fights such as Lawler versus McDonald, there will be a clear winner and a clear loser, rather it be a TKO, submission, a knockout, or a decision rule by the judges. And you can read these quotes too if you want to. I'll pause the video, and you can feel free to read these quotes if you want to from our wise philosophers. But overall, WWE and the UFC are pretty much, I guess you can argue that there is a comparison in the fact that they both pretty much advertise violence and stuff like that, but at its core, they're completely different. WWE tries to tell a story through its wrestling, while UFC is just pure sheer violence to see who's the better one and who will be the one to show the world what they have in store and that kind of shenanigans. So the WWE again is just storytelling and wrestling. UFC is just pure violence. That's just how it is. And the reason why people may want to be MMA fighters or WWE wrestlers or just wrestlers in general is because of fame, competition, money, or belts. Or maybe they want to be MMA fighters or wrestlers in general, maybe because of all four of these things. I think UFC and WWE can also prove to be successful and maybe even a stable career if you're also a top draw, if you're maybe Anderson Silva, or if you're John Jones, or if you're George St. Pierre, Conor McGregor, or Ronda Rousey, then also you can make a fuck ton of money, fame, and etc. Or if you're in the WWE, if you think of household names like Undertaker, Kane, Batista, Triple H, John Cena, Randy Orton, Big Show, then list goes on. Also, they can reap all four of these benefits as well too, because both sports, they've done it all. They've made a ton of money, they've won a lot of accolades, they've become famous, and obviously, I think the biggest example would be for WWE. It would be The Rock, how he was able to transition from WWE to Hollywood, or how we have in Brock Lesnar's case, how he was able to transition from WWE to the UFC, or even Ronda Rousey, how she was able to transition from the UFC to the WWE. Or maybe competition, like I said, maybe they want to prove themselves to see, okay, who is truly the number one. And the reason why people like The Undertaker or Kane or Anderson Silva or even Daniel Cormier, the reason why they're sort of up there is because they've been able to destroy their competition and to cement their legacy as one of the best of their division or of their generation, and etc. But with that being said, this video is getting rather a bit too long, and with that, it is all. Finn.